In a quiet corner of Terrell, Texas, resides a lost bit of World War II history that you can still visit. A place that maintains the nearly lost history of a time when British cadets came to America to earn their wings. Today, we're headed to the site of the first British Flying Training School.
Texas is full of lost history, from lost cemeteries to abandoned buildings. From the infamous to the obscure. Hitch a ride and travel across the Lone Star State, looking for hints of Texas' colorful past, our lost history. This is Expedition Texas, and we're gonna find it.
The impact of World War II on our nation is well documented. It's history we shared with our allies, and sometimes that shared history hits close to home. During World War II, thousands of British cadets learned to fly at 6 civilian training schools across the southern United States. The first and largest of those schools was in Terrell, Texas. More than 2,200 Royal Air Force and United States Army Air Corps cadets earned their wings over North Texas between 1941 and 1945. Today, all that remains are hints of the old training ground and a wealth of preserved memorabilia at the British Flying Training School Museum. Today, we're headed there to explore. But first, like hundreds of other weary travelers zipping down I-20 and Highway 80, we couldn't resist the inviting billboards advertising fresh pizzas and barbecue at Pam Orchards.
Hi, welcome in.
Thank you. Hi, Richard, Sharon, how are y'all doing?
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Good to see you. So, it's hard to believe that all of this started from a roadside stand.
It sure is.
Okay, so how did it go from that to this? I mean, we got acres and acres of people out here shopping for peaches and barbecue and ice cream. What happened?
Well, I truly believe it was organic and it was a God thing. We just listened to God and we listened to our customers, and here's where we are today.
So you have peaches, obviously, but also ice cream, barbecue. Tell me kind of what all people can find when they come out here.
Well, we have the freshest fruits and vegetables that you can get, and we try to really use our local farmers and get everything as fresh as we can. We have a bakery, and our girls make everything from scratch. Our crust and our pies, everything from scratch. We have the most amazing, just like Grandma made fried pies here. We have homemade ice cream. We have award-winning Eddie Dean barbecue. Our ice cream has also won awards, and Matt Fisher is here on the weekends playing his guitar and singing, and he is amazing.
So we have all of this, and cantaloupes too, but I kind of want to go out and see where all of this starts, which is in the orchard. Can we do that?
Absolutely.
We sell everything right out the door. That's the farm to table thing, you know.
Wow, who knew so much care and love went into raising peaches?
I guess it's a labor of love, and people think we just open up 3 months out of the year and we have all these peaches, but we work year round to get this product.
Orchard started in the 80s when firefighter Dale Ham bought a few peach trees and started setting up and selling on the side of Highway 80. And my, how it's grown. In fact, Dale's daughter Sharon met her future husband Richard right there in that orchard. A year later they were married and life has been peachy ever since.
So we've driven for what feels like a mile to come out here, and we're out here now, and all of it's been orchard to the side of the road. How many trees are out here?
We have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 15,000 trees.
Wow.
A lot in production this year, and this is our Dixieland peach right here. This is it's one of our last peaches of the year. It is a freestone variety, and the longer they stay on the tree, basically the sweeter they get. So it takes a lot of care to get the peach to this level here, because it goes through the pruning process during the off season, and then whenever we bud, we go through and we thin, we take off about 80% of the small little buds whenever they're budding, and then about every 6 inches to a foot, we'll have an actual peach, and that's how we get a large, beautiful peach.
So every one of these trees gets that much attention?
Absolutely. We have crews out here, and we actually go through and by hand thin the little buds off, and then we come back, and then when we do the picking, we have crews that come out and they pick, because a peach is once it gets ready to ripe, it's so soft, it's fragile. You can't just take them and throw them in a barrel or shake the tree like you do on some different things like that. They have to be hand picked, put in the containers, and then gently taken with the trailers back to the barn for sorting, or up to the store. We sell them right out the front door. We sell everything right out the door. That's the farm to table thing, you know.
Wow, who knew so much care and love went into raising peaches?
I guess it's a labor of love, and people think we just open up 3 months out of the year and we have all these peaches, but we work year round to get this product out for the customer. And you know who the boss is? The customer's the boss.
I thought she was.
Oh, well, she definitely. There's no doubt about that.
We're near Terrell, Texas. We've come to see the British Flying Training School, but made a quick stop on the way into town to pick up some fresh peaches and other goodies at Pam Orchards.
Send down the rain, but when you're planning just how it should be, plan a good day for me. Lord, I hope this day is good. I'm feeling empty and misunderstood.
We've traveled to Terrell, Texas. We come to visit the British Flying Training School and Museum, located at the airport. The British Flying Training School Museum houses hundreds of artifacts preserved from that time when the British earned their wings over Texas. This is Bill Hutmaker, the chairman of the board at the museum.
Actually, there was a small flying school that was about a mile from here that they had going, and they realized that if the war came to Texas, that there was going to be some unemployment. They found out there was going to be these flying schools. They got together with a flying school in Dallas, found out what the requirements were, went out, purchased 500 acres of land, and that in itself is a great story. And the government then awarded them a contract for school. And it was that simple. It was employment and the fact that they could contribute to the war effort. It was open 1941 to 1945. And then after that, the school itself was decommissioned after the end of the war. One of the big stories about it, though, is the fact of the way that the Terrell people took in these 18, 19-year-old cadets. And that's a huge story and a huge part of the museum and why it's here. In fact, we're the only museum out of the 6 schools. And that whole story of the cadets coming in, learning to fly, being away from home, many of them had never even driven a car yet. They're learning to fly a plane. Many of them had never been off the farm yet. They travel 5,000 miles to get here. So there are a lot of stories, one of which was a gentleman named Henry Manjwick who came over, was trained as a cadet, went back, flew in the war. By the way, he happened to meet a girl here. At the end of the war, she flew over there. They got married, raised some kids. In 1955, they came back. He became a citizen. They became very active in Terrell, and he was mayor of Terrell from 79 to 81. So there are a lot of stories about what happened back during this school, which trained cadets, helped win the war, but yet was a whole part of the community.
You're watching Expedition Texas.
Terrell, Texas, learning about the British Flying Training School, a place where British cadets were trained and ultimately earned their wings over Texas. Bill Hutmaker told us all about the history of the school, but we're getting a tour of the museum from Executive Director Patrick Cotard. Hi, Patrick. How's it going?
Hey, welcome to the museum. Great to have you here.
Excited to see it, man. A lot of history here.
We're looking forward to showing you around.
Been through Terrell many, many times. Had no idea this happened here.
Well, I tell you what, we've got a great story to tell, and we always love sharing that information with everybody, and we're looking forward to sharing it with you today.
Yeah, I believe a lot of this stuff is through those doors right there. Can you show me
right
around?
Through the doors. Let's go on through. All right, well, this is interesting, a good starting point. An interesting individual here. This is Major Long. Major Long was the person who was in charge of the BFTF school here in Terrell. And he was the person running the whole operation under contract with the British. So he was a very important individual, and prior to that, he'd had a contract to help train American Army Air Corps pilots. So he had an existing relationship with the U.S. government, and then that transferred over after Lend-Lease to helping the British set up their school here in Terrell. This is a 1/3 scale model of a PT-17 Stearman.
Okay.
Now this was a primary trainer used during World War II. It's a 1/3 scale model, and it was recently donated to us, and it's a beautiful model, and it represents the primary aircraft that would have been used here, as well as at all kinds of other Army Air Corps bases, RAF bases around the world as a primary trainer for Allied pilots to learn how to fly. In this area here, we have this scale model of what the air facility here, the flying training school and the airport would have looked like circa roughly 1942-43. And so it gives, because the airport has changed quite a bit since the 1940s. So we have this to give people an idea of what its configuration was during the war.
Now, I understand there are still at least one hangar, but multiple hangars here.
Yeah, there's like 1 to 2 hangars that still exist.
Which ones would those be?
Those would have been the very large structures that you see in the in this diorama here. The current access to the museum is on Silent Wings Boulevard, which cuts through where you see these 2 small aircraft represented on the tarmac. And our current museum is about right here. And what has happened is they've obviously made major changes over time to the museum and how planes are parked and where they taxi and all that. And this large structure you see here on this diorama is one of the original hangars that still exists to this day. This was a training device used to help train pilots to learn how to use their instruments and to rely on their instruments when flying. And so it was developed by Ed Link in the 1920s, and they were used until the early 1950s. And they were a very popular standard training device to teach young cadets how to fly using their instruments and how to use their instruments in general.
So does all of this back here have anything to do with it?
Yes, an instructor would be here monitoring the situation, and then as the situation inside this made-up, say, cockpit, if you will, would allow the pilot to learn and use and direct the aircraft, the simulated aircraft, if you will, and then whether they're making the correct judgments or not are then recorded on here, and the instructor can then go over with them after they finish the trial and let them know, well, this is what you did right, this is what you did wrong, this is maybe how you should be using your instruments. So it was training to use your instruments and to make judgments on navigation and flying.
That seems really advanced for the time period we're talking about.
Well, it was really well thought out in the sense that you had an instructor monitoring the equipment that would record how well the student was doing. It was a way to test the student and to train the student and then go over with them how the cadet was doing in directing and flying the aircraft using the instruments.
We're in in Terrell, Texas, exploring the British Flying Training School Museum. Executive Director Patrick Coulthard is showing us around.
This miniature display here encompasses a lot of Dr. Allman, who had been in the Air Force. His estate have donated a lot of items to us, and we have a number of things, including pieces of ordnance used during the Vietnam conflict. So we have this here to honor our Vietnam veterans and to also display some items used during that latter conflict. Yeah, if we come this way, you'll see we have some radial engines on display. For example, this Kenner R565. You can see how these 5 cylinders radiate from the center of the engine, hence radial engine. And radial engines were a very important part of the war effort. For example, planes like, say, the B-17s and B-24s would have had types of radial engines in them. This here is a Gilbertson A-1020. It's a 9-cylinder. So you can imagine the power that comes out of 9 versus 5 cylinders. So these large engines would generate large amounts of power. For example, if you're a B-17, you have to remember that this is before they had compression in the aircrafts, right? So you would have to have 4 of these engines to get you up to over 25,000 feet.
Wow.
So
and it looks like here a shot of them maybe working on.
Right, and we have the images showing maintenance on the aircraft engines and what it would take. And of course, sometimes in certain parts of the world, they're trying to maintain these engines and they don't have the luxury of lots of large hangar space. They're sometimes doing it under tents, under trees, out in the field, whether it's in the Southwest Pacific or in Europe or various other fronts of the war.
After a quick walk around the museum, it's time to head outside and see the remnants of the original airfield used by the British while they trained there.
This is part of the original taxiway. So the original that are still in existence, hangars would have been over to our left, and the planes would have taxied out this way, across this tarmac, this taxiway, out towards the runway. And the runway is still in the same location, and they would have gone there to practice, obviously, flying, their landings, takeoffs, everything like that.
And this is original here.
And this would have been an original section here. All right, this is one of the original hangars. You can see, obviously, there have been some modern additions and other work done to it, but you can see the sort of shed room coming off the edge here. And this would have been where they would have kept some of the original aircraft and done maintenance on them during World War II.
When learning to fly in the skies over Texas, there are bound to be accidents, and some 20 British cadets lost their lives. They are interred and memorialized in nearby Oakland Cemetery in Terrell.
All right, we're out here at Oakland Cemetery, where 20 brave British flying cadets are buried. And you see the graves are well maintained. And the first individual to pass away, to get killed in a training accident, was Richard Mollett. He died in November of '41, the 30th of November, right before our entry into the war at Pearl Harbor, due to that attack. And then the rest of them are laid out here in neat rows. And what I always like to point out is to look at the age of these young men who made their ultimate sacrifice during training. Like Raymond Berry here was only 19 years old. And it just shows just how the immense sacrifice made by these young men during the conflict. And this is a wonderfully maintained spot here for these brave men. And people can come and visit these when they want. The cemetery is open. And of course, we're free and open to the public as well. BFTS Museum on Silent Wings Boulevard in Terrell, Texas.
We would love to come see you again. Thanks for showing us around, Patrick.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Terrell, Texas was the home of the first British Flying Training School, and remnants of that school are all around the city, but the collection at the British Flying Training School Museum is one to behold. Plan a trip to take a look for yourself at the artifacts there. Down the road, there's another lost legend waiting to be discovered, and on Expedition Texas, we're going to find it.